Director Mazibuko Jara joins us. Mazibuko, happy 2026. Confirm you can hear us?
I can hear you clearly. Hello. Thanks for the New Year greetings.
Fantastic. So,
same to you.
We're going to start with your reaction to the South African human rights, which says there's a systemic collapse and I'd like your impression of what does that mean for the lived reality of people in the Northwest when we talk water, sanitation, dignity. I mean, what's the best example if we're taking the Northwest into context?
Indeed, the systemic collapse is so dire, so severe, such that ordinary people cannot even get water and sanitation. There's an important case in the Northwest province of the Redefining municipality. In 2018, residents in that municipality took the municipality to court, and the court decided that the community has a right to run water and sanitation services. And even with that court decision, the municipality still tried to resist it. The fact that there could be such a court decision demonstrates that people have no confidence, the systems have collapsed, monies that are allocated from the municipal budget are not being spent properly. People without skills are having important services, and as a result, we get polluted water, we get no water in the taps. Even sanitation is not working properly. Even something as basic as the collection of refuse does not work properly in Redefining. But it's not just in Redefining, it's across the Northwest. That is why the Human Rights Commission reached that conclusion. What it means is that even businesses cannot function. You remember the case of Clover closing down a dairy production facility in one of the municipalities in the Northwest simply because it could not get a guarantee of clean water, which is so crucial in the production of dairy. That's the extent of the crisis.
So you are running the Fiscal municipalities initiative, and I suppose you're best placed to give us some idea of where the real problems are, because it's not money. From what we understand, money is released, money is being misspent or not being spent. This morning, Redefining, one of our reporters who's in the Northwest, was speaking to a member of the community, and it says because of the 114 euro celebrations, the January 8 celebrations happening in the Northwest, everybody has water coming out of their taps. So it is all possible. Where is the problem?
Look, there's still a problem with money. For example, the equitable share from the national government is inadequate. For example, the policy requires that municipalities generate 70% of their revenue. Where do small municipalities generate such revenue? Johannesburg, Pretoria, Cape Town probably could, but not small municipalities. So there's still a problem with the fiscal system for financing municipalities. Of course, then what you are reporting that on the day of the ANC anniversary, all of a sudden, water can pour out of the taps, shows that if there's political will, these problems could be solved, particularly the appointment of appropriately skilled people away from the influence of political parties or interests of political parties. In addition to that, effective public participation and effective public oversight so that councillors are accountable, the administration is accountable, and people can follow the money. If there's a budget item allocated, how is it being spent? How is it being reported? And who accounts for it when it is not being properly spent? Those are some of the problems that need to be solved. With the local government elections coming up, I think the challenge for communities is to see if they can get councillors who are accountable to them, but also they as communities can use the tool of social auditing to follow through with the budget allocations and expenditure.
So if you were to look into your crystal ball of sorts, right, and look at the landscape of where we are, local government elections on the horizon, what is it that any councillor or any political party that's appealing to these voters, what is their pitch? What does their pitch have to sound like?
Look, I have no faith in political parties at all, because ultimately political parties are institutions that serve the interests of politicians and not of communities. And this applies not just to the ANC, but across all political parties. Where I have faith is in the organized power of communities, of civics, of social movements, of civil society, of NGOs I think that's where the question should go. How do those voices put pressure such that they are a factor during the elections? Can we have independent candidates? Can we have movements contesting the elections? But over and above that, can we have organized communities on a sustained basis, exposing corruption, challenging poor service delivery, holding all of these people, councillors and administrators, accountable, but even pushing alternatives? For example, in Makhanda, given the water crisis in Makhanda, the unemployed people's movement there has proposed the idea of a people's engineering panel, which can report to the community about the problems of the water crisis there, but also begin to train the community to be able to monitor the reports of the relevant council department on how the water problem is being solved. Those are the kind of solutions which we need to learn. A horrible example, but useful, would be Orania. In Orania, despite its racist roots, but actually there's a demonstration there of what is possible if you have organized people who govern their affairs. That's what we need to do more and more across the country on a democratic basis. But also then, what that means is the need to build the skills, to build the capacity of ordinary people in the community, so that councillors, actually, administrators actually are scared of the people, scared in the right way, scared such that they can actually act properly and solve these problems.
All right, we are also joined by Professor Kedibone Phago from the Northwest University. Professor Phago, thank you very much for your time. We just heard Mazibuko speaking to us about how he envisions the Northwest communities being so empowered and emboldened that the ANC gets to a point where they are afraid of them and empowered in terms of skills. But it's one thing being empowered with skills and having no opportunities to leverage off of, right? So, I mean, we see that despite being one of the mining and agricultural hubs, a majority of the people in the Northwest are economically excluded. How does the ANC start to remedy this?
Good morning, and thank you for having me here. I think this is a very useful conversation because the government needs to take up its role of making sure that it provides services. And sometimes, even at this point in time, we have come to talk about basic services. So it means that we are in a crisis situation, and it looks like there isn't an agency from across the board to say, how do we normalize the situation that our public institutions, government departments, municipalities, state-owned enterprises are optimal and are providing services as they should. So it's quite important that that aspect is taken care of. But the other part is that it is an important point that communities need to organize themselves to make sure that they participate in the governance processes and public participation processes that are in place as a way of putting pressure to government, and also making sure that they keep public officials and our public representatives both in our legislatures, so in municipal councils, in provincial legislatures, in the National Assembly and National Council of Provinces to account. I'm not so certain, though, that we will have a way where we are properly organized as societies to support communities and bring capacity, because that would mean that we then need to redefine the role of government, because we need to remember that we are already paying taxes that should be used for public services. So we and this is why I believe that this matter is already in at a crisis proportion, that political parties, not just the ANC. Of course, it has to take the bulk of the responsibility for the decay and for the service delivery problems that we are experiencing. But all these political parties and players that are in place in our provincial legislatures, in cabinets, must take full responsibility, because they are benefiting out of the taxpayers' funds, but they are not coming to party. So what that means is that if we create other parallel structures like the private sector has already done, then it means that we are more like hiding our heads in the sand and not taking the matter up as we should. In other words, making sure that public representatives, government officials do what they have signed up for.
Phago, you speak of greater engagement between the community and the ANC through various structures. But I wonder if, platforms such as town halls, door-to-door visits by ANC officials are still relevant, and if that is still a way for them to connect with the reality of the people of the Northwest.
Yeah, so that is not public participation. That is political campaigning, and so political parties use that to go and lure voters to support them. And I think they are doing that, as we already know that many of the political parties have already started campaigning, and in the months to come, they will be ramping up their campaigns machinery to go door to doors and do rallies and so on to sort of sell their brand to voters. So ideally, I think our role as society needs to find a way of making sure that the systems that are currently in place are actually being utilized, because we are in a constitutional democracy and we've got structures and systems in place that are helping us to keep our democracy intact. So, for example, we have got the Chapter 9 institutions, we've got the Office of the Auditor General that would issue out annual reports and tell us about the performance of each and every state entity financially, and also in terms of performance of the institution. So they will give a report of institutional performance, not just about the money. So I think where we have civil society, where we have got communities organizing themselves, NGOs, CBOs, they need to then take up those kind of reports and start putting pressure on our public representatives that are in legislatures to say, what are you doing to make sure that when the executive appear in front of you, you actually represent our needs. So, for example, we would expect the provincial legislature of Northwest, because it is made up of multiple political parties that are representing the people of Northwest, to ask the government of Northwest these questions. Why are we not having waters? Why are our municipalities not functioning? What are you going to do to make sure that we have got water? When are we going to have water? When are we going to have municipalities providing many other basic services without us coming? So in other words, if we are able to do that well, we should be able to make sure that we keep our public representatives in the legislatures accountable, but they also follow up on our behalf, because we have what we call a representative democracy. So those people in the public, in the legislatures are representing us as the society. So we often forget about them and only talk about those who are in government, in the executive.
All right, Professor Kedibone Phago, thank you very much for your time. And professors from the Northwest University, and Zabalaza Pathways Institute Executive Director Mazibuko Jara, thank you for your time.